Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly wild, high-stakes scenario unfolding in the world of motorsport right now. I mean, just imagine trying to organize one of the largest, most logistically complex sporting events on the entire planet, an event that usually takes an entire year of meticulous, down-to-the-minute planning. Now, imagine doing it essentially overnight. Formula One is returning to Malaysia after nearly a decade's absence, stepping in at the last minute to replace a canceled race. The sheer scale of this sudden pivot is absolutely staggering. And honestly, the behind-the-scenes scramble to inject billions of dollars into the local economy, directly into the Malaysian people, is just fascinating. Okay, let's dive into this. 2. That is the exact number of months Malaysia has to pull off an absolute logistical miracle. When the announcement was made by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim that the F1 Gulf Air Bahrain Grand Prix would be shifting to Malaysia, the clock immediately started ticking. Typically, a host city has 12 full months to get into gear for an event of this magnitude. To condense a year of planning into less than 60 days, well, it's virtually unheard of in modern international sports.
Section 1. A sudden shift in gears.
So to understand how we got to this intense 2-month sprint, we really have to look at the massive logistical problem Formula One faced earlier in the year. The entire racing calendar was thrown into total disarray by global events far outside the control of the racing world. Originally, the Bahrain race was locked in for April, but as the conflict in the Middle East unfortunately dragged on, organizers were forced to cancel the events in Bahrain as well as Saudi Arabia. With upcoming stops in Qatar and Abu Dhabi also hanging in the balance, Formula One found itself with glaring, massive holes in a normally rigid global schedule. They needed a replacement, and they needed it for early October. That mid-year cancellation created a huge void, completely flipping the usual 12-month prep time into a frantic, rapid-fire countdown. To really grasp the gravity of this, listen to Hans Westerbeek, a professor of international sport business. He points out that the situation necessitated F1 to think entirely outside the box. As he states, organizing an event at this scale within 2 months is, quote, unique. I mean, that is basically the equivalent of a 2-second F1 pit stop, but for an entire country's infrastructure. This isn't just a minor schedule tweak. It is a massive disruption and a historically unusual venue change for the sport. It demands a level of agility that Formula One rarely has to exercise.
Section 2. Why Malaysia took the wheel.
So with the schedule in absolute crisis, why did Formula One turn to Malaysia? The decision certainly wasn't made in a vacuum. Other countries were definitely considered as potential backup venues, but Malaysia brought some highly distinct strategic advantages to the table that the other options simply couldn't match. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why Malaysia beat out the competition. Turkey and Japan were reportedly in the mix, but look at the logistics from the perspective of the Formula One teams. When these teams move from one circuit to the next, the logistical operation is mind-boggling. Moving the entire F1 circus across the globe is incredibly difficult. Malaysia offered a very close logistics connection and, crucially, proximity to the next race. From the teams' and drivers' perspectives, they highly value this continuity rather than facing massive geographical gaps between events. Malaysia was simply the most convenient and practical option on the table.
But it's not just about geography. There's also the track itself to consider. The Sepang circuit, which sits just south of Kuala Lumpur, has actually maintained its Grade 1 license since its last F1 race back in 2017 because it hosts other events. This is the absolute highest certification issued by the FIA. Because Sepang held on to the specific license, the track itself was already proven to be ready for elite racing. It completely bypassed the major technical obstacles that other potential backup venues would have inevitably faced.
Section 3. The 2-month logistics sprint. Having a certified track is really only half the battle. While the tarmac might be ready for the world's fastest cars, getting the rest of the venue prepared for tens of thousands of international fans in under 60 days presents an enormous on-the-ground challenge. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking at what requires money pumped in versus what is already good to go. The track condition, already up to standard. But to meet F1's notoriously high luxury standards in under 60 days, spectator and hospitality facilities require massive, urgent upgrades. And reaching that spectator goal of 100,000 people per day, that means pumping billions of dollars directly into the Malaysian people. We're talking massive, immediate economic engines firing up for local construction crews, hospitality workers, and local businesses. This urgent need for investment brings up a very, very important economic question. Remember, the Malaysian government terminated their Formula One contract back in 2017 specifically due to falling returns.
So, with such a shockingly short runway, can this one-off event actually generate a profit and drive those billions of dollars of meaningful revenue to the Malaysian people? Well, the answer lies in how much the landscape of the sport has shifted since 2017. We are looking at a totally different market today, heavily influenced by the Netflix effect. Shows like Drive to Survive have sparked renewed interest, making F1 super popular among a massive, younger global audience that previously didn't even care about motorsport. This totally changes the math. It gives major sponsors like Petronas a really strong incentive to jump back in. The goal isn't just a short-term cash grab. It's about making a short-term investment to learn from past mistakes, revamp the 2017 era, and reap long-term benefits in this newly energized market.
Section 4. The Singapore Grand Prix Connection.
To fully understand the genius of this investment, we really need to look at the regional calendar. Let's move to Malaysia and see how this builds when we consider how this sudden Malaysian race fits geographically and chronologically with what's already happening in Southeast Asia. You have the newly added Malaysia race immediately followed by the established Singapore race. They are running nearly back to back. For F1 enthusiasts, this creates two massive choices right next door to each other, practically creating a multi-week festival of racing that benefits the entire Southeast Asian economy.
Now, you might be wondering, won't one race just cannibalize the other? Well, according to Professor Westerbeek, the answer is no. Because the Singapore Grand Prix is such an established juggernaut of an event, ticket demand is consistently high, and they essentially sell out every single year. By the time this Malaysian race was announced, most of the corporate and ticket sales, not to mention hotel bookings for Singapore, were already done and dusted. The gates in Singapore just won't be undermined by Malaysia's sudden addition.
So the crucial point is that this isn't a competition with Singapore, it's a synergy. This is a separate, isolated opportunity for Sepang. Malaysia can effectively piggyback on the immense promotion and publicity that is already generated for the Singapore event. They can lift the entire region, offering fans a chance to experience elite racing a week prior to Singapore. And more importantly, those who brought the event back to Malaysia are using this isolated opportunity as a massive, high-speed test event to see if they can permanently revamp their F1 era and bring those billions in tourism dollars back to the Malaysian people for good.
Which brings us to our ultimate question. The stakes are incredibly high, the timeline is impossibly tight, but the market has literally never been hotter. If Sepang can pull off this logistical miracle in under 60 days and actually capitalize on the surging global popularity of the sport, could this chaotic 2-month scramble ultimately become Malaysia's permanent ticket back into the Formula One calendar? It's a high-speed gamble for sure, and the whole racing world is going to be watching to see if it pays off. Thanks for tuning in.